So they shifted from 6v6 to 5v5, and the part of that change was because crowd control abilities from every single character was really absurd. You felt like you were in a pinball machine. But we have a lot of high mobility heroes in the roster. Yeah, no, there's a ton of those. I can't argue there. Team can't always rely on their tank to take care of them. Fix that for you. Yeah, especially since you switched from 6v6 to 5v5. But that aside, so we're softening our approach here. We don't want to return the game to the state it was in previously, but we feel like there is more room. We feel like there is room for more CC, especially soft CC in our lineup. Okay, where are you going with this? We'll be making changes to both May and Cassidy for season 5. Oh boy. I don't know why they're doing this. There's nothing fun about this. Having a larger slow is so frustrating. Having an effect that slows and blocks movement abilities is also incredibly frustrating. This feels like the wrong direction that they're going in, rather than coming up with a proper solution that solves the problem of high mobility heroes. They're trying to do a band-aid solution, and the band-aid solution is bringing stuns back into the play for other characters. I don't feel like that's the right play. I think a better play would be, rather than adding in stuns, rather than adding in slows isn't terrible, but it's terrible when it's baked into the kit. It should not be baked into a primary fire. An ability is kind of pushing it. A slow inside of a hero's kit should be something avoidable. For example, Junkrat's bear trap. I mean, there's not much to it. He throws it down. It's a bit embedded in the ground, so you can't just obviously see it. But I mean, if you're not paying close enough attention, sure, you'll get caught in the bear trap, and that completely restricts your movement. But there are ways around it, such as paying attention and avoiding it, or paying attention and deciding that you're going to get rid of it. One could say that it's area denial, and that's exactly what I want to bring to the table. However, I don't think DPSs should be the ones to solve this problem. The supports should be the ones to get it. For 3 examples that I'm going to bring to the table, it's going to be Zenyatta, it's going to be Brigitte, and it's going to be Moira. Let's start with Zenyatta. His Discord orb is already in a bit of contention in Overwatch 2 because of the shift from 6v6 to 5v5. It's not really healthy for the game because he is effectively a powerhouse. Is the tank the ability is brain dead, and it's simple. You really just ask yourself one question: is the enemy tank in your line of sight? Yes, Discord orb them. Done. That's all you do. Is the enemy tank in your line of sight? No. Wait for them to come into your line of sight. Repeat the question. What if Zenyatta could effectively look at a spot on the ground and throw his Discord orb, and instead of putting it on a player, he would put it on the ground, and the AoE would be roughly the size of Ramatra's vortex grenade. If enemy players walked into it, they would be hit with a 15 to 20% damage increase, or damage debuff. They would take more damage inside the AoE. Not as strong as before. The number can change. Really, the point is you would no longer put it on a player, you would throw it on the ground, on top of it being on a cooldown. What would the cooldown be? That's up for professionals to decide. You could do 12 and 6 seconds like Bastion. I don't know. The point is the mechanic. I'm less worried about the cooldowns. Next up, I would suggest Brigitte. I understand that they've already reworked her ultimate. Reworking her further basically just be a lot for this one character. It might end up changing her too much, but hear me out. I don't feel like her kit makes sense. Her ultimate, sure, it's pretty cool. Shield's big. It's got a stun, but I mean the stun's tied to the ultimate, so I suppose it's not that bad. I guess we'll see. They may or may not remove it. I don't know. I haven't gotten to touch it because I dipped out about halfway through season 3, so it's been a bit since I have been playing. I just follow the news. I feel like her ultimate still fits within her kit better than her actual kit. She just seems like a very weird character with a very weird kit. It makes sense thematically, it doesn't make sense logistically. She's not supposed to be a character that gets into the fray, which is understandable. I get that. However, for a melee support, she is not actually supposed to be someone that gets into the fray. She is supposed to be someone that stays back and sort of stays in the mid/back line. And it just seems very strange because her kit doesn't say that. She has a very close range primary ability. She has to do damage in order to heal. She has a rocket flail that launches 20 meters and then knocks back enemies. She has a shield bash that lunges her forward. Like, do you see what I'm getting at here? So I would remove the rocket flail, but I still think the knockback from the rocket flail is important, so I would put it into the shield, because the whole point of that is to knock back your opponent, is to keep your opponent at arm's length. You're not supposed to be hugging them, but you're supposed to keep them at a decent distance. And what I would replace the rocket flail with is caltraps. I think caltraps would be a better ability for her. She would throw them down, let's say a cone in front of her, and those would be area denial. They could embed themselves into the ground a little bit, a lot like Junkrat Bear Trap. And if the enemy walks over them, one of two things could happen, or both. It could damage and slow. It could just damage. It could just slow. I'm leaning into the damage because, let's be real, no one likes being slowed. So I think it should do damage. Now, of course, that isn't always a fun thing to have to deal with, or having an ability that is placed on the ground and you can't really deal with. It is kind of unfortunate. However, the caltraps could be destructible. It could be just like Junkrat's Bear Trap. If you see them on the ground, you shoot them and they go away. Very similar to Gridlock's ability in Siege. You don't have to go that way. You could go around, but you can shoot them. That takes time. That alerts the enemy of your presence, which is enough time for the enemy team to peel for their support that you are trying to go for, because you're trying to dive them. And that's the whole point. The whole point is to discourage the enemy from pushing that specific direction. Now, Moira's is a bit tricky. I didn't really find anything similar to what I wanted, effectively what I'm trying to describe, but her ability would replace her damage orb. Now, hold on. Let me cook. They tried changing her damage orb, back in the beta, and people didn't really like that change because it was, one, kind of absurd, two, because it wasn't really fun. It was more of a reactive ability, and there's nothing fun about that. So what I would like to suggest replacing it with is, think of a shadow, relatively long stretching shadow that has the signature Moira damage purple. And you would launch it out and it would slowly creep across the ground, about the same speed as a damaging or healing orb when it's actually in use. And it would slowly creep across the ground, and any enemy that walked into it would take a decent amount of damage. That whole shadow would keep creeping across the ground for its entire duration, and would keep moving forward and forward. Now, if it just hits a wall, it would just stop. It would just stop and it would sit there until the duration runs out, in which case it would go away. However, let's say it hits a wall where a player can climb that wall up to a platform or the next floor or whatever. The shadow would actually creep up the wall and then keep going and follow them. Think this ledge in Colosseo, for example. It would keep moving, move forward. As soon as it runs into the wall, it would creep upwards, and then it would keep going again. Effectively, whoever is inside the building at the time would be completely safe. If an enemy tried going up the wall and over, the shadow would follow them. Now, I mean, the simple way to avoid this is, not going to the Prometheus school of running away from things. But I just thought it would be more interesting than Moira's already occasionally very frustrating damage orb that will get you from any direction. The only challenging thing with it is there's a lot of edge cases on what it should be able to go over. I know King's Row, there's this wall that the player can climb. They cannot stand on top of, but they can climb and hop over. Whether or not it should go over that, I don't know if it should. And there's a whole lot of different edge cases here and there, but that's probably the most dividing factor on whether or not that ability would be good or broken. Now, I'm not saying I know better than the devs. I'm not saying that. However, I do feel like what they're doing is a band-aid solution. And from a fellow game designer perspective, it doesn't feel like they're deploying a genuine solution, and instead feels like they're deploying a band-aid solution. And I really feel like they should fix that.